there is very little for us to really seriously be worried about whether there would be enough food for in the globe to feed the global population in future. But if we fail to change any of these very, very critical, important components of the future strategy, there are big questions and growing trade-offs, as has been already mentioned. Now, let me just give you very quickly some basic information about how the food is produced, where the food is produced as of now, and what's likely to be the scenario. Most of you may be knowing that developing economies, which actually is going to already constitute something like 81% of the global population, is going to constitute 83% of the global population in 2030, is right now producing 42% of the total food grains plus pulses, and the share of these developing countries is likely to increase to 47%, is going to be the largest bloc in the globe to produce the basic cereal and pulses. The share of developing economies as of now is relatively higher in terms of producing non-cereal plus pulses crops, which is poultry, meat and milk. So this is how the geography of basic food basket production stands today, and there are indications that there is going to be an increase in the crop yield, there is going to be an increase in the overall production of basic food basket tilting in favor of the developing countries. But as you will see from the subsequent graphs, that tilt towards developing countries only marginal, is not as substantial as one would like to expect. Now, when one wants to talk about the increase in the future food production, there are evidences which says that something like 50% of the arable, that is cultivable land globally, is still not brought under cultivation. So this says that there is still a large scope for expansion of area, which is generally seems to be closed in many largely populated countries, including in India. But if one looks at globally, there is still a large scope. But when it comes to the potential for increase in area in developing economies, that potential is almost next to zero. So this brings the whole issue of the geography of where the incremental food is going to be required, and where the additional area available for producing more food is going to be available. There is a fundamental mismatch between where the more food needs to be grown and where the land is available for growing more food. Therefore, the strategy globally now, as of now, the thinking, including at the FAO, the thinking is the twofold. We need to intensify production, increase yield, the standard conventional yield augmenting input intensive technologies for intensification of crop yield and crop production will be required, and the other part of the strategy is there should be an increase in the international trade, because the food is not, the additional land is really not going to be available in the area or the region and the country where the additional food is going to be required. But both these actually raises significant concerns for ecological security. Intensification is very simple to understand, that it is going to be a threat to ecological security, but even increasing trade can also lead to increasing threat to ecology, because it does not necessarily allow the ecology of different countries and different ecosystem to perform their best the best suited role of ecological functions. If that happens, then there may be trade and there may be enough food globally which can be exchanged through trade for profit to feed the people, but then globally the ecology may be under increasing stress. So when one needs to really think about the strategy which is right now on the board of many international organizations which is planning for the future food production. These are some of the things I have already talked about. I was saying that there is going to be an increase in the food production in the developing economies, but that increase is really not going to be that large and that very strong. And this is something which tells us some other aspects of the geography of where the food is being produced. South Asia has a fairly large share in production of cereal and pulses, which is the main food component of the food basket. This is followed by North and Central America and also Europe. We see that Africa has a very, very small proportion of the production coming from of cereal and pulses coming from this, and it is this and in some other parts of the poorer countries, including in South Asia, that one has to really change the focus of how one is going to change the three pillars which I was talking about: the commodity composition, the technology, and the geography of food production. The critical question, therefore, we need to address is how to change the product mix, the technology, and the geography in an asymmetric global scenario. Asymmetric in terms of economic power, asymmetric in terms of their natural resource endowment, and asymmetric in terms of their ability to negotiate on the global negotiating platform. This is the context in which the trade in food as of now and in future needs to be seen, and therefore the asymmetry really becomes very important as a reference point. The broad answer for the lack of time is as follows. We need to again work on the three things. We need to enhance carrying capacity, that is the natural resource development as a strategy in large parts of the countries, developing countries, including Asia and Africa, where food productivity is already low, but I'm sure there are ecosystems-based adaptation or ecosystems-based approaches to improve the natural productivity of their soil and water. These are some of the things which have been for long very, very grossly neglected because of the very, very monotonic way of looking at crop production technology, which is external input aided. So we need to think about enhancing the carrying capacity in terms of producing a very diversified food basket suitable to different kinds of soil, water, and climate in different countries and ecological system. Another thing on which one needs to work, where the answer lies, is explore and promote alternative technological solutions. There is a plethora of literature which talks about right from GM technology to various other conservation agriculture and zero tillage and green technology for crop production, all available on the menu. But when it comes to choosing a particular technology for enhancing food production and productivity, that entire discourse somehow gets hijacked by the false or misplaced sense of urgency. There is some kind of a pressure which gets built all around the world through various stakeholders, which makes the urgency look much more than what it actually is on the place, and therefore leads to a kind of technological solution which again takes us back to the conventional solutions of input intensive technologies for producing food, because the entire discourse is influenced by the sense of urgency, and in my opinion a somewhat misplaced sense of urgency and scarcity and crisis. We need to get out of this because the alternative technological options take time to get established. The alternative technological options require much more local, diversified and negotiated processes through which that technology gets established. So it's an entirely different process through which one may evolve new technological options than what one has seen historically from the days of the Green Revolution. These technologies are not going to be entirely produced within a laboratory or experimental farms. It requires a very different, participatory, diverse, and very broad-based, long time-taking process. The community who are concerned with the future and sustainable food production and food security has to be willing to commit this kind of changing of gear and a paradigm shift in which technology is going to be evolved. There are already alternatives available, but those alternatives need to be given a fair chance to be established on a larger scale. And that is a commitment which I think one requires from a global society or association like this. Last thing is about improve the income distribution across different regions, countries and households. This may look little politically charged or little utopian, but let me say that's why the geography of hunger and geography of food production matters a lot. If we think that feeding every human being on a sustainable basis is a global common good that we all want to sign up for, then I think we also have to start thinking about making a large proportion of the hungry and the poor who are not able to access the food. Madam had already talked about the three elements of food security. They are not access the food which is already produced and stored in different parts of the world, including in some of the countries like India, where huge amount of foods are being stored and stocked with the government, but the poor people in the country simply just do not have the wherewithals or the effective purchasing power or even the public distribution system which can actually reach out to the homes of the hungry and the poor. So unless we also simultaneously start thinking about how are we going to create an alternative economic scenario gradually, which also gives poor access to more purchasing power, the complex problem of food security and ecological security is not going to be resolved by itself. We may still end up having more food being produced at the same time, many more people who are still asleep hungry. So that situation needs a solution which is a distributed solution and which comes through a different type of a economic growth model which is more distributive rather than very concentrated in its nature. And this kind of more distributive economic growth model is also conducive for using a kind of technology for crop or agricultural production and ecological sustenance, which requires more hands, more careful and skillful hands to till and cultivate and mend the land and other natural resources instead of only using chemical and mechanical inputs to produce more foods. So there is a convergence among all the three now solutions that one talks about. That convergence is difficult to visualize, but there is definitely a very, very synergetic and organic link running through all the three propositions. And fortunately, all the three that we are talking about, be it ecological carrying capacity or technology or economy and income distribution, they have a capacity to be adaptable and they have a capacity to be dynamic. So it's not that there are things which are just written down on the wall. All the three options really offer alternatives in a dynamic setting. One has to open up one's mind to really think of a global production scenario very differently. All the three solutions, again, as I have noted, are located or essentially structural in nature, which means that somebody who is thinking globally at macro level needs to take different decisions about how to change these structural impediments which have right now decided a particular kind of, or produce a particular kind of growth, thereby a particular kind of income distribution, a particular way of producing food crops, and a particular way of looking at ecology and economic growth. So one needs to, all the entire structure of policies which determine all the three possible solutions that I was talking about needs to be changed drastically. We also need to then calibrate the global trade framework, because I was saying that one part of the strategic approach is about intensification of agriculture, and we said that in the previous slide I had talked about the alternative solutions to that. The other part of the strategy is increasing the global trade of food or aid of food. Now we know that we need to, I perhaps don't have enough time to get into the detail of how the global trade of food or global aid for food has actually dampened the very capacity of different countries, including in Africa, to be able to develop their systems in a manner which can produce sufficient and sustainable food to feed a large, if not the entire population which lives there. And same is true in many pockets of Asia, including in South Asia and India. So one needs to think of the trade in food which is not necessarily to be driven by the competitive advantage. It is not to be driven by the profits in the market, and it is not to be necessarily driven by how much of the market share one is going to retain in the global food trade, which are the standard normal ways in which the trade framework operates. One really needs to rethink, a drastic rethinking about how the global food trade needs to be looked at. One needs to internalize ecological costs within the framework of competitive advantage. The WTO framework as of now does not really incorporate environmental costs or environmental damages caused by crop production, which then enters into the trade, or which then decides the competitive edge of a particular country to be able to export a particular food commodity. This necessarily needs to be calibrated. Unless that happens, the trade route for solving the food crisis or food insecurity problem may further aggravate the ecological challenges in different, both in the north and the south, or the sending or exporting countries and the recipient countries. But it may also cause certain political tensions which would then be very, very critical to be resolved when it comes to food crisis. Replace food trade and aid by basic investment in natural resources is the basic, is the punchline of what one would like to say here. Instead of sending the aid in terms of produced food, please send investment which are fairly flexible, which are fairly at an acceptable level to the recipient country, and help those economies to develop, improve the carrying capacity of their ecosystems and natural resources, so that they can actually start producing at a higher productivity level a more and diverse food basket. That's the message. So one needs to, one needs necessarily to get into the issue of North-South dialogue on food and ecological security. And the concerns that we have talked about necessarily need to feed into the global negotiation on food, trade, environment, and also on employment, poverty, labor processes, or livelihood and MDGs. All these concerns, unless they really very critically and unambiguously get fed into the other set of negotiations which take place simultaneously, thinking of a